I don't know what it is about BTK, but he comes up in so many of my videos in one way or another. Either him getting caught by a floppy disk or his deranged selfies. He just seems to fit in a lot of my episodes. In this video, I want to talk about something on the fringes of this case that has always fascinated me. Serial killers' families. So this is going to be a bit different than the usual breakfast cereal episodes. What do you think of this different look? I like it. I kind of want to use this video just as a spot to dump a bunch of thoughts. I want to start a conversation about things and topics that I think are less covered in the true crime genre. So why don't I just shut up and let's get into it? Well, that doesn't make any sense now, does it? Before we get into his family, how about a little update? So where is BTK now? Well, he's here, the El Dorado Correctional Facility, a maximum security prison in Kansas. He's been there since day one after his arrest, essentially. He's done one on-camera interview in prison that I'm aware of. It's definitely worth checking out if you have the time. I'll add a link to it in the description as well. He also then ended up giving a phone interview, which is sprinkled throughout the 2022 miniseries BTK, Confessions of a Serial Killer. Also worth checking out. He's still writing letters and sending them to various news outlets and family members. Finally, just recently, he's popped back up in the news again. And the empty lot where his house once stood was dug back up and searched again. Pop his name into Google, and it's one of the first things that comes up. You can read about all those new developments. Okay, that mostly brings us up to speed on Dennis himself. But what about his family? A lot has been covered on the impact serial killers have on their victims and the families of victims, obviously. The devastation left is unimaginable. But not so much is out there on the families of the killers. I guess most of them are quick to disassociate and get the fuck out of Dodge. Unless, of course, you're Lionel Dahmer, Jeff's dad. He wrote a book and sat down in front of just about any camera to talk about Jeff. And strangely then in his later years, he decided to wear a disguise so he wouldn't be recognized. You know what else works? This. There were also some interviews with Bundy's mom. But if I'm not mistaken, those were mostly when she still thought he was innocent, right up until days before his execution. Now, I'm not saying there's zero other instances of family members of serial killers speaking out, but Gacy's sister, she was on, I think she was on Oprah. And yeah, I'm sure there's more, but by and large, they don't speak out. I wouldn't. Would you? So circling back to BTK, Dennis was known as a family man. So what became of this family? He married Paula Dietz in 1971. Although it is said she walked in on him a few times while he was like this, she apparently had no idea of his twisted double life and crimes. We got treated to a couple reenactments in Mindhunter, remember? Anyway, after his arrest, she rushed to the courts and was granted an emergency divorce, and then she gone. No interviews, no photos even. The few out there have her face blurred. Her daughter Carrie, who I will get to shortly, has mentioned being with her mom as recently as 2023, so it seems as if she's still alive. I wonder if she remarried. I would be super nervous to be that dude. I mean, I've heard of messy breakups and crazy exes and all that, but BTK's your ex-husband? No thanks. I mean, sure, there's no chance he's getting out and coming after you, but still, she probably stayed single. There was a movie made a few years ago. It's a pretty bad movie, but it was loosely based on BTK and the dynamic with his wife. It was called Good Marriage. You should check it out. Dennis and Paula had 2 kids. First, let's talk about Brian. Like Mom, not much is known about Brian either. I found this on YouTube.
Coming up on River City Presents, Brian Rader of Leonard the Band.
Down in the comments, it says, I don't know, if you immediately vanish from the public eye, never give an interview, do you just start releasing music under your own name? I sure as hell wouldn't. Plus, like at 111 in the video here, he refers to his brother Adam, so no.
My brother Adam, who's the bass player.
Not him. BTK didn't have a third kid named Adam, so this guy down in the comments, not him. Put it simply though, Brian Rader, it's a popular name. There's also this site. Now that's definitely BTK's daughter Carrie, so is that Brian? It just doesn't look like brother-sister poses to me. But hold on. A quick check-in on Carrie. And this photo appears on her Google listing as her husband, Darian. The internet is a messy, disorganized place. Believe me, it's hard to know which photos are legit. I run into this all the time when I'm editing these episodes for you guys. For example, look at this photo. This photo here. This is a childhood shot of Ed Kemper. No, clearly this is a 90s yearbook photo, but it's widely distributed online as Kemper's childhood shot. Now, this happens everywhere. Truth be told, I don't think there's gonna be any unmasking of Brian Rader anytime soon. And frankly, that's a good thing. Just leave the guy alone. But it does bring up an interesting point. For people like Brian, or like Jeff Dahmer's brother, David, they've distanced themselves as much as possible. They probably changed their last name. My question is, when do you tell someone new and important in your life who your dad is or who your brother was in David's case? BTK's daughter, Carrie, she'd already met and married her partner before her dad's arrest. BTK walked her down the aisle to him less than 2 years before his arrest. But I don't think that was the case with Brian. So when in a relationship, do you bring that up? Or do you ever bring it up at all? It's certainly not first date material, but it's a question that you'd have to dodge for sure. What do your parents do? Or something like that. It's a pretty common first, second, third date type of question. I guess you'd lie, maybe. Dad's dead. But eventually you gotta tell the truth, right? Unless Brian has decided to basically write off his entire immediate family forever and start 100% fresh, like the witness protection program. Because Carrie's out there on the internet, his sister's out there writing books. I tell you this much, you better make sure you really trust the new girlfriend before dropping that info on her. Brian's gone to great lengths to remain hidden. And then all of a sudden he's gonna just tell a girlfriend about it and then, has a messy breakup. Then things could get dicey. Same with David Dahmer, Jeff Dahmer's younger brother. By all reports, he changed his name and moved out of the state. He avoided all interviews. The grubby Sun paper caught up with him a couple years ago and gave us these photos here in 2023. Side note, the shitty Sun, they had to make this comparison, didn't they? Sherry and Lionel had this to say about David on Larry King.
We've promised to keep him completely secret.
He has
with
a
respect.
career
No, that's right.
and a
I
family.
don't know to be
Exactly.
specific, but is he happy?
He's very happy.
He's happy.
We're expecting a second grandchild. Everything's going well.
2 kids. That interview is from 2004, meaning David has 2 kids at least in their 20s. When do you tell them about their uncle? I'm sure they gotta know, right? I mean, they must have known their grandpa. I guess maybe he wore his sunglasses disguise when he visited them. But I mean, I can't imagine being sat down for that conversation at like 15. Can you? Then again, maybe they don't know. There truly is very, very, very little out there about David. The Sun was good enough to not even reveal the town they found him in, surprisingly. And Lionel and Sherry, zip, they won't say anything. Lionel passed away even a couple years ago now. So, it could be within the realm of possibility that David's kids don't know who their uncle was. I gotta say, I hope that's the case. But not everyone shies away from the spotlight. Enter Carrie Rawson, BTK's daughter. So following BTK's arrest, Carrie, like her mother and brother, disappeared from the public eye. They wanted nothing to do with Dennis. But fast forward a few years, Carrie is everywhere. She's writing books. She's appearing on podcasts, attending Crime Con. That's a bit of a weird one. She was even working with law enforcement on some unsolved cases. Since the time of his arrest, Dennis wrote many letters to Carrie. She initially didn't respond, but after a few years, she wrote back. She tries to reconcile the man her family knew and loved with the man the world knew as the monster BTK. Compartmentalization, folks, to its extreme. So in 2023, for the first time since his arrest, she visited her dad in prison. And in June 2024, she posted her full victim statement on X. It's a Google Doc. It feels strange to see just a plain old Google Doc posted, doesn't it? It's very personal, kinda in a way. I mean, look, it even has the request edit access button. It's not some official looking document or anything. I mean, it's not overly long, just a few pages, and it's a very interesting, sad, and disturbing read. But why does Carrie consider herself a victim? Listen, if you ask me, there's no denying the fact that the family members of people like Dennis absolutely suffer. They're definitely trauma victims. Where the internet gets arguing, though, is whether or not her personal trauma and story needs to be presented publicly. And in some cases, like her book, for financial gain. Is that appropriate? It's a delicate subject for sure. Honestly, posts like this one don't help. Just, I don't know, weird, right? She has a number of tweets defending her right to earn money from the book, like this one. My book was written by me. It took 4 years of very hard work and therapy. I taught myself how to write. And my book isn't about my dad's murders, it's about my life. I'm a crime, trauma, and abuse victim. My family is the 8th victim family. I owe no one nothing. Apparently, when she told her dad she was writing the book, he tried to convince her to let him co-author. My God, how delusional. He was pretty angry too when she said, not a chance in hell. But aside from the trauma of discovering your dad was a complete and total monster, there's also this. This is an excerpt from her statement. Dad, nearly a year ago, I offered my volunteer assistance to law enforcement and flew into Oklahoma to sit down with the Osage County Sheriff's Office. The first night I was there, they let me into your journals and the heap of evidence that the public has never laid eyes on. It's a whole lot, Dad. I stood up and quickly started decoding your insane mishmash. A few minutes in, as the room quietly filled with officers and more stood by the door, witnesses to your horror, I came upon it. There it was in all bold caps. Carrie, BND, Game, 1981. What in the actual hell? I said out loud to the room full of badges. Does that say what I think it does? BND is Dad's code for bondage. My stomach twisted into white-hot lightning. There it was, after 4 decades, proof that you, my father, had SA'd while I was a toddler. Last June, I arrived at the prison for the first time in 18 years. I hugged you, tears in your eyes, shocked to see me. You, of course, denied it, even when law enforcement officers showed you your journal. Here, Dad, it's in your writing. You merely replied, it was only a fantasy. Now that's some pretty heavy stuff. So listen, end of the day, I don't know her heart of hearts, and neither do you. I think she makes some odd posts, like the buy me a coffee link at the top of her ex profile, and occasionally puts her foot in her mouth, but hey, don't we all? She's human, after all. I'd like to give her the benefit of the doubt. It's easy for us here on the internet to have a strong opinion about what Carrie should or shouldn't do. But none of us have a dad who was a very famous serial killer. We have no idea what that feels like or what that does to a person. So while I think having a dialogue is fine, I think we should all make sure to approach the conversation with some empathy. On a more positive note, she gives us an update on BTK's health, stating that my dad, Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, is in a wheelchair and rotting to his core in prison. Well, that's good at least.